Welcome to my channel for this State of the World, March 2nd, 2025. We've seen the debacle, the fiasco in the White House, February 28th. I already made a video about that. Let me just repeat. To me, Zelensky did us a big favor by exposing that the emperor is naked. He put it in front of everyone what is happening. Remember, it's better with an open enemy than with a false friend. Now, where are we? Have you heard about the Nerd Reich? A lot of people, I bet, haven't heard about it because of how communication and media works. Basically, it's a Silicon Valley conspiracy among the big tech companies that control social media to take power in the United States and convert it into a, shall we call it, fascist dictatorship, because that's what it will be. And that means that they are manipulating the algorithms to keep facts away from you. I'm using Blue Sky now, the app Blue Sky, which is not influenced by that. That's a good source to get information. Media in the United States are under the boot of the Trump regime. They are threatening with lawfare, and Trump now, once he has got into the Oval Office, has the possibility to use all the powers of the federal government to go after companies, media companies that do not dance to his pipe. So we have to consider the United States a dictatorship already, unless they terminate that presidency early, which nothing indicates that they will, except that people are furious. In town halls, they are furious at the Republican elected officials in Washington. And they flee. They flee because they can't face the voters. So we'll see what happens in the US. But meanwhile, what is happening in the rest of the world? Well, here in Europe, I'm in Sweden, we are preparing to take over the vacuum left by the United States when the United States is effectively leaving NATO. And that means that we here have to defend the borders of Europe. On March 6th, there will be a meeting with the European Commission where they will draw up plans for a drastically enforced European defense. And I have some points. I will show them with a map in the end of this video, what I think should be done, because defense, the best defense is also often an attack, it's said. Attack is often the best defense. And in order to discourage Putin and bring him to the negotiating table and make him leave Ukraine, because he cannot get 1 square centimeter of that country, we have to make him realize that if he doesn't do that, he's toast. And toast means attacking Russia, defeating Russia militarily, which I personally am 100% convinced that we in Europe can do, because Russia is a paper tiger. And there are perfectly viable options for defeating Russia if we unite. Not go one by one like Sweden did, and then France, and then Germany, but together we can defeat, and we should defeat Russia, because it's an evil empire. But if he capitulates, well, maybe we can reach some solution like the United States did with Japan after World War II. But anyway, back to the situation. Russia has invaded Ukraine 2014, starting with little green men, or maybe they were black. Now, they are doing the same thing in Colombia, because the attack that the ELN guerrilla, those who held me hostage, who are actually working for the Venezuelan regime, ELN, Ejército de Liberación Nacional, is supposedly a Colombian guerrilla, but half of them are now Venezuelans. And they are working for the Venezuelan regime, who in turn are intimately connected to the Cuban regime and the Nicaraguan, and who in turn are intimately connected to Putin in Russia. So actually what is happening in Colombia is that Russia, Putin, is invading Colombia the same way that he invaded Ukraine 11 years ago. So now the conflict has spread from just Europe, just in quotation mark, to also involves South America. And North America, Donald Trump is a Russian agent. His KGB name is Krasnov. That has been alleged by former KGB agents. So that's the situation. And then we have China, who obviously are looking carefully what is going on. And if they see an opportunity, a weakened West, they might take the opportunity to invade Taiwan. And if they do, it would spell disaster, because a lot of the chips that the world depends on are fabricated in Taiwan. So, to the European Commission, it's super important to strengthen the defense, obviously, but also to make manufacturing plants for chips in Europe and in bomb-secure locations, preferably underground, because we'll need a lot of chips for the drones, because this third world war, which effectively has already started, will be a war of drones. It already is in Ukraine. So that's the situation of the world. Now, what about the economy? Well, one of the things that this requires for the European Union is to abandon this focus on climate change and the green, whatever they call it in English, omställning in Swedish. It doesn't matter at this point of time. What happens with the climate in 50 years is irrelevant if we lose the world this year. You see, we have to defeat the evil empire, Russia, which now has put their agent in the White House and taken over the United States together with the Third Reich conspiracy. So we first have to liberate the world, and then we can go back to thinking about that. And the economy, well, everything we invest in military enforcement here in Europe is going to go back to salaries to Europeans. The only limitation here is basic resources. So we need to make sure we have access to the resources, and then cut the red tape and put people to work for strengthening defense and prepare an all-out attack and defeat of Russia. It can be done. It can be done. I'm going to put up a plan at the end so you can see it can be done. Now, first a word from our sponsor. Pardon, a brief interruption for a message from our sponsor, so we can keep this channel active. If you study sediments, you owe it yourself to take a look at the sedimeters from Lindorm.com. And if you don't, maybe you know some environmental expert or engineer who may find it useful. The sedimeter is inserted into the sea bed, where it measures a vertical profile, so you can see things that happen both above and below the bottom. The sedimeter determines the bed level with millimeter precision, and it's very useful for studying siltation, resuspension, sedimentation, and erosion. This SM4P model also functions as a sedisonde, a freefall penetrometer that is dropped into the sediment where it measures the shear strength, while simultaneously measuring the turbidity profile. This is a unique instrument and very portable. It's even possible to combine the functions of sedisonde and sedimeter by dropping it into the sediments to measure the shear strength and leave it in place to continue monitoring as a sedimeter. The newest sedimeter model can also be used above the water, and it can be used to track both sediments and water level. It's a 48 centimeter instrument where the sections can be combined to much longer sensors. So go to Lindorm.com to read more about it and get a quote. Now, back to your video. Welcome back. Now let's take a look at the map. We have in blue here the countries that are in NATO or allied, and I put India in here because India, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, I think they are in some kind of cooperation, and India just signed a free trade agreement with the European Union, I understand. So this is the constellation we have, and obviously Canada is a member of NATO, but the United States we can count out unless they terminate the presidency of Donald Trump early. So we have also here in yellow the Ukraine where there is a war, which started with the invasion of the little green men, so to say, in 2014. And now we have the similar situation in Colombia, little green men invading that country, the ELN guerrilla, which is actually a front of the Venezuelan regime and the Cuban regime and the Russian regime. So it's a copy. That's why I have similar colors for Colombia and Venezuela. So as we see, we are already in a conflict over several continents where Russia is behind it, Vladimir Putin. So, in my personal opinion, Russia has to be defeated. Vladimir Putin, the regime of Vladimir Putin has to be defeated. Surrender without conditions is the only acceptable end, because Russia is a rot on the world body that has to be removed. Now, Europe has a very good position here, and if we ally with Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, especially Japan, we'll have a better possibility to encircle Russia. And the weak spot of Russia is the access to the ocean. They only have a few ports. They have Vladivostok over here, which is behind Japan, and that's where Japan comes in. And by the way, that's a zone of conflict with China. And then they have the Black Sea, Crimea. Obviously, that's the reason they took Crimea, to get that Sevastopol back. And they have some port here which is not that good. And then they have Kaliningrad, Memel, Königsberg, the old Königsberg. But that's separated from Russia, as we all know, by NATO. And they have St. Petersburg or Leningrad or Petrograd, or whatever they call it today, up here, and the most important of all, Murmansk, up here. So if we look at the possibilities to do a war against Russia, if it comes to that, and I think we in Europe should prepare for a full-scale war with the intention of defeating Russia. Because if Putin really believes that he has no chance, then perhaps World War III in full scale can be avoided. But it demands of us in Europe that we prepare ourselves fully for defeating Russia. We have to have a plan for how to wage the war against Russia and defeat Russia. And I'm convinced that it can be done. As a few examples, this is a very small area where they have access to the Baltic Sea. We can shut them out from the Baltic Sea. And similarly, we can shut them out from the Black Sea and thus the Mediterranean. We have Turkey, we have Greece. And Greece controls the water after the Bosporus and the Dardanelles. So that's perfectly possible. Those are key allies, Greece and the Baltic Sea nations. And then up here, Russia has one railroad and road up here to Murmansk. And there is a weak spot here where it can be cut off. Obviously, there was a war fought already in 1939, the Winter War. And up here in this area, Russia has their strongest defenses. And how do I know? Because I have seen their secret military engineering map over that area. We bought that for $1 in Riga after the Cold War. So I know where their installations are here, and they're right here. So this is the key area to cut off Murmansk. And once Murmansk is cut off, they only have Arkhangelsk, which is not ice-free year-round over here. And similarly, if they are cut off in the east, over in Vladivostok, and the other port up here, it will be very difficult for Russia to communicate with the world oceans. And over here, as you know, these Kuril Islands are occupied by Russia, but they belong to Japan. So there you have it. Now, I'm not going to go into any concrete plans for how to do it. Obviously, Europe will also need long-range weapons to strike deep, deep, deep inside Russia, because all of this territory here has to be within striking distance in order to defeat Russia. So that's a big task. Now, that's all for today. Please subscribe, turn on notifications, and give a thumbs up if you like this video. Thank you.